Hello, Diasporan family. Welcome to the sixth episode in our series where we've been looking at navigating parenting in these uncertain times. Today, we are going to be looking at how we find agency in this uncertain environment. So, if you recall, in the previous episodes, we started out looking at what's happening now, how is it impacting on us, how we talk about it with our children, and then how we build resilience. All of that has focused on what we do inside, in our homes, in our families. In this episode, we're going to take one step forward and sort of step outside of our homes to the world outside. How do we navigate uncertainty while cultivating hope and a sense of agency for both ourselves and our children? So, what do I mean by agency? Agency is that feeling that your actions matter. That because a lot of what the current environment does is that it takes choice from us. It takes autonomy from us. Rules are being made that impact on us. But what agency means is that even in this world of uncertainty, we can still make choices that are our own, choices that protect us, choices that nurture us, choices that empower us and our families in the areas and in the scope that we are able to do so. Now, why is agency important? It's because it is essential to us as human beings. Research shows that a sense of agency actually reduces in the intensity of chronic stress. Regardless of what is happening to us, if we feel like we have some level of control, that helps us as well as our children. And this involves actively engaging in discussions, routines, community activity, or support, all of which help us to have better emotional outcomes, even in high stress environments. So, having established what we mean by agency, what are some of the practical ways in which we can do this? Because I'm sure you'll be wondering, of course, all of this is out of my control. Policies are being made, rules are being made, and I only have to respond to it. The first thing I want to say is that I'm talking about agency just within the context of what we can control. We've talked about that, in fact, last time, but looking at our homes and how we can build, curiosity and joy in our homes. But this is looking outward. How can we build that agency within the area of our control? The first thing for us to be able to build agency, firstly, we have to have knowledge, because knowledge is power. So please stay informed about the policies that are being made, the community that is around you, and the resources that are around you to support you. Because in as much as these policies that are being introduced are challenging, and we also know that there is a community that is trying to support families who are impacted by this. And when you know the policies, the next thing to then know is, of course, your legal rights. Knowing your legal rights, first of all, creates some form of certainty for you about the scope in which you can, if you like, act out your agency. But also, it enables us to create tangible ways, real ways in which we can respond rather than react. So we respond to the policy rather than react on what is being done to us. So what are your legal rights? And what your legal rights are will differ depending on your particular circumstances as a family or as individuals. So one really important thing, knowledge. Get the knowledge that you need, because knowledge is power. The second thing then is, in the context of that, planning family routines. We talked a little bit about this last time in the context of curiosity and joy, balancing that with uncertainty. But here we're talking about family planning and routines in the context of how you plan in light of the policies and the changes that are happening. So first, I would say plan for contingencies in light of your circumstances, and discuss those with your children in ways that they can understand. What are the rules saying? What does that mean for my family? What could potentially happen? And this may vary. For instance, for somebody who has settled status in some of the countries where this change is happening, it may mean telling your child, even though you have settled status, the way these rules are being implemented could impact on you in these ways. So if X happens, this is what you do. Or if you are one of those, for instance, being impacted by the UK changing the UK rules because of the ILR provisions in terms of either salary thresholds or how much time it may take to have fully settled status. What does that mean for my family? What are some of the changes that we may do? What do we have to do? Do we need to change jobs? We need to start exploring for new opportunities now before our current contracts come to an end, because we know that the salary threshold has changed. Now, after we've ensured that we know what is happening, we know the rules, we have knowledge, we have made active plans, proactive plans, the next thing is to create safety routines. What are the things that we do to ensure that we are safe, or if the unexpected happens? What is the plan that we have as a family? What is the plan that our children, that we know that our children will understand that we have for them? In this context, even very simple steps matters. So for instance, if, like I said, if you have settled status, say in the US, something happens, you may need to know a phone number. So what's the phone number that you may need to call? Who is the first person that you may call? Are there agencies that you may call for support? You know, do you have an emergency contact? How do we reflect that? Where do we leave that with our children? Yeah. Are there meeting points, areas where we can ensure that we are all together? So that fosters a sense of control, that if the unexpected happen, there is something that we can do. Or if we're coming to the end, for instance, of our current contract, what can we do? What are some of the areas that we can have some control over? That's really important. And then thirdly, support. One of the things that we've always talked about in Diasporan Mom is the importance of your village, that you don't have to do things on your own, that we all need one another. So what are your community connections? Have you established those already? Engage. So first of all, establish those networks. Who is my village in this particular context, in this particular environment? How do I engage with those supportive networks? Whether they be local organizations, they be religious groups of communities, your faith groups, maybe friends who have similar experiences. Ensure that you have that community and that you have appropriate connections with it, where you are engaging and making sure that you're well supported in the ways that you need. And then finally, it's also about what you can do in this wider context. Last time we talked about how young people, for instance, may safely be involved in volunteering or advocacy. I'll repeat that here as well, because that's another tangible thing that you can do. How can you volunteer? How can you advocate? Even in small actions, to help other parents, to help teens feel empowered, to help yourself feel empowered. Are there things that you can sign? Are there letters that are being written that you need to put your signature to? You know, any little thing that you can do. Of course, make sure that you're doing this safely. Make sure that you're doing this in a way that's appropriate for the country that you're in. But no matter how small, that kind of agency, that kind of activity does empower you to feel like you're regaining, you're taking back some of the control. Right. So now, having talked about that in a very generic sense, we'll do again what we've done throughout this series. Look at age-specific ways in which we can encourage agency. So for our very young children, again, 3 to 7 years old, within that range, it's limited what they can do. They may not be doing things really about the wider policy context, but agency, even in their day-to-day activities, will create some level of control. So, for instance, we can start by saying, well, let's give our children choices where possible. It could be something as simple as what book they would like to read first before another. It could be something as easy as what would they like to do, go to the park, or be involved in coloring or some other craft work. That gives autonomy, that gives control. In their day-to-day routines, involve them. So for instance, if they want to pack their backpacks for school, check whether or not they have everything they need for school, those are things that they can be involved in, so that they have control about what happens to them in the day-to-day, in those very, very small ways. And again, for very important, acknowledging when they've done those things, even the little things that they've done, to celebrate them so that they understand that they can safely express, their autonomy without being put down. So if they express, for instance, I'd rather draw than this, and it, oh yeah, I'm really glad you made the decision to color this today. It's really beautiful. That gives the children assurance that they can express themselves safely. Now, what about our children who are aged about 8 to 12 years? We'll carry on with the same theme we talked about last time, because for this group, we want to show that they can actually do something. So we can encourage them to problem solve. So for instance, if something feels unsafe at school or in the community, what steps can we take? We can discuss scenarios with them. We can discuss maybe something that came up that they've heard. So how do you think we can respond in that instance? How can we make that safe? How can we make you safe? What are the things that we can put in place to make you feel safe? So we encourage them to problem solve as an act of agency and control for how they would like to respond in those circumstances. We can also involve them in family decisions. So how do we plan, for instance, our schedules? How do we plan some of the things we talked about earlier that we should discuss as a family? Safety procedures, who to call, numbers, who do they think, who will they like? That sort of thing includes children in those decision-making processes. It could even be something as simple as planning meals. What are we going to have for food? That gives children some level of autonomy and agency. And again, once they've done all of these things, let's highlight their contributions, that even these small contributions matter, that it's an act of their agency. So again, it could be something as simple as, oh, thank you for doing that. Oh, thank you for helping your brother or your sister with organizing their backpack this week, or with planning how they could organize their backpack this week. It was really helpful. You made a big difference to them. That shows that they can do something, that they are doing something. Now, for our teenagers, again, we know that they're slightly older, and they can perhaps do a bit more than the younger children. One way is in which teenagers can be involved is encouraging civic awareness. So when we talked, for instance, about knowledge about what is happening in age-appropriate ways, how can they understand or curate knowledge about what is happening and safely engage with community resources, maybe petitions, maybe activities in school that promotes their own sense of fairness, justice, without being unsafe. So safety is really important, but encouraging civic awareness in this age group or supporting their civic awareness when it is safe is a really good way to create agency or help them have agency. For this age group as well, of course, they're a lot more capable. So encouraging autonomy in their daily responsibilities, but of course, ensuring that they are staying connected. So we're not sort of giving them free reign, full reign, but giving them some autonomy. How they manage their schoolwork, for instance, how they check in with your family routines in ways that reassures them that they still have control of their day-to-day lives, even if the world around them may not be that certain. And in terms of our family planning, discussing potential scenarios and strategies with them. Again, here we need to be really careful that we're not doing this in a way that scares them. So we're not going to say, oh, if they arrest us, it's not in that kind of language. But if this were to happen, or the other day this happened with that family, if it was us, how do you think we can respond to that? How do you think our family will respond to that in that particular instance? And I think that potentially would help empower children in those circumstances. So, to round up, as parents, again, we anchor all of this for our children and for ourselves as well. And as we think through how we can have agency, let's ensure that we are looking after ourselves. And one way in which we can look after ourselves is to continuously reflect on what we're doing and to give ourselves taps on the back when we're doing the things that we've set out to do. So we could start our day again by simply identifying one action today that I can do that gives me agency. One action today that my family can do that gives us agency. And at the end of the day, asking the same thing, what did we do today? What did I do today that gave us a sense of agency? Because it's really important that we keep the family bonds going. We can ask ourselves, what can my family do together today that increases our safety, that increases our connection, or that increases our understanding, not just of the rules, but our understanding of one another? And our modeling, what we are modeling. Modeling confidence that happens, continues, even if it's in small things. Modeling that we know that together as a family we will face whatever is coming. Together as a family, we will support the families that we know we can support. Together as a family, we will ensure that all of us thrive, and regardless of what happens, the same way we've navigated other challenges before, we will now navigate this challenge. So, in that brings us to the end of this episode. We started our journey looking at what's happening, fear in our families, how we can notice it, how we can recognize it, how we can manage that fear, how we can communicate with our children to discuss that fear. We then went on to talk about how we can continue to live joyously despite the challenges, how we can continue to create curiosity, how we can continue to create positive environments in which our children are thriving, where they are resilient, where they still have hope. And today we've talked about how we can move outside of our families to continue to ensure that we have some control, we have some agency, despite the uncertainties that is around us. I hope that you have found this episode helpful and all of the series helpful. Please let us know what has worked for you, what you have tried as a family, or even different ideas that we may not have talked about that may help other families on this journey. Please continue to look after yourselves, stay safe, and hug close the ones that you love. Thank you for watching.